Welcome to The Hypnotist, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. Brought to you by the hypnotherapist demanded by celebrities, CEOs, and even royalty, Adam Cox. These recordings took place live from Adam's clinic in London's world-famous Harley Street. This podcast features powerful hypnosis, so do not listen while driving or operating machinery. This recording is not suitable for those with epilepsy or severe mental health issues. So, get yourself comfortable and enjoy today's episode of The Hypnotist.
Hi, it's Adam here, and in this episode of The Hypnotist, you're going to be listening to a hypnosis session that was created for a lady that would find herself triggered by the behaviors of people around her. And sometimes that would be things like drinking alcohol or talking in a particular way, and she would find herself very on edge. What you're going to hear in this hypnosis session are two key, very powerful principles. The first is utilizing the metaphor of the control room of the mind and a form of stage disassociation is to change the sensitivity to triggers so that she can see herself coping in a much more measured way, that just because something happens doesn't mean there has to be that instantaneous reaction to that, and then trialing that out by having her take the first person perspective and experience what it feels like. So accessing a resourceful state of hearing or experiencing the trigger and then feeling that she can handle and cope with that situation. And the second part of the hypnosis session is an alternative way. So this particular client was using smoking as a way to handle stress and anxiety. And what you're going to hear is a breathing technique where you have 3 outward breaths in the single breath. So you take a breath out, a normal breath out, and then extend the breath, the second breath, and then the third breath. So there's no air left in your lungs before taking the breath in. And then doing that several times, in many ways, becomes a more effective way of managing stress and anxiety than cigarette smoking, because cigarettes are a stimulant that's not ideal to manage anxiety. Where smoking actually does tend to help people is they take themselves out of the context that's causing stress, which is a pattern interrupt. They also change their breathing and they change their physiology because it's perceived to be relaxing. And that's what actually creates the state change. So this is just a tool to create the same state change, but without needing the cigarettes and therefore breaking that unhealthy habit. This was obviously created for someone else. So if you are triggered by events, and that could be a trigger for anger, it could be a trigger for anxiety, it could be a trigger for stress, whatever it is, and you want to help with that, there will be a link in the show notes that you can book a free 30-minute consultation call with me to explore what it would be like to work with me. But for now, find a quiet place where you won't be disturbed, relax, and enjoy the session. Take a deep breath in. As you breathe in a resourceful feeling of relaxation. And as you exhale, just get a sense that tension is leaving your body in your outward breath. That's right. As you breathe in and as you breathe out, I want you to give yourself 3 breaths as you breathe out. Breathe out naturally as you normally would. Then breathe out 1 more breath. And 1 final breath, fully emptying your lungs before you take the next deep breath in. And notice that as you breathe in, it feels like you're breathing in a resourceful feeling of relaxation. And then as you breathe outwards, breathe out normally. Take a second breath out. And then the third breath, meaning that you're breathing deeper than you normally would. I want you to get a sense that as you're breathing in, a feeling of resourcefulness, I want you to get a sense that as you breathe out those 3 times, tension, stress, and anxiety is leaving your body, but mainly on that second and third breath. It's usual for humans to breathe in from that top of their chest, but I wonder what would happen that as you take that third deep breath out, on the next breath in, notice that you're activating that lower part of your lungs near your diaphragm, enabling you to take such a deep breath. That's it. And that second and third breath out, that's where the anxiety, the stress is leaving your body, giving you a sense of clarity and relaxation, enabling you to go deeper and deeper, relaxed now. As your body relaxes, keep breathing out in that way that whenever you remember to do so, take those 3 breaths out. The usual, the second, and on that third breath, exhaling every element of what's in your lungs, creating a vacuum for you to take a resourceful, refreshing breath in, and notice that it's already starting to make you feel good. Those happy hormones in your brain are starting to be released because it feels good to breathe in this slow, steady, relaxed way, enabling you to go deeper and deeper, relaxed now. I want you to use the power of your imagination to imagine being in a corridor, and at the end of the corridor you can see a door, and I want you to accept that that door is a doorway to the control room of your mind. So many things that happen in your body happen unconsciously. Your heart beats without you having to make it. You blink whenever you need to. You don't have to think in order for your body to digest food. So much of what is happening all by itself. And I want you to get a sense that it's the control room of your mind that is the interface between the conscious and the unconscious, between thoughts and emotions and how your body responds. And therefore, if we change the cause and effect relationship between one thing, it stands to reason that that will have a ripple effect in something else. Imagine walking down the corridor and standing in front of the door, and that control room of your mind is just an internal representation of a control room. You could imagine it to be futuristic. You could imagine it to be mechanical, with buttons and gauges. Whatever comes to mind is exactly how it should be for you. Standing in front of the door, I will count down from 5 to 1, and then you will walk through the door into the control room of your mind, starting to count 5, putting your hand on the door handle, 4, turning that handle, 3, opening the door, 2, walking through the door, and 1, closing the door behind you as you are now in the control room of your mind. And since we're here, we may as well just boost up things that are going to be naturally useful for you anyway. I want you to find some button, gauge, switch, or dial that represents confidence, and just boost that up. And notice that as you turn that, you start to feel more confident. I want you to locate another button, another dial, another gauge that represents inner strength, your ability to be resilient, your ability to take whatever life throws at you and respond quickly to get back on track. Just dial up that resilience and inner strength, giving you a sense that you can handle more without being flustered or anxious. And notice that that also feels good. I want you to get a sense that some things in this control room have a cause and effect relationship. And I want you to imagine there is a screen where you can see moments from the past in this control room, and I want you to see a time where you were triggered. Maybe it was a sound, maybe it was a smell, maybe it was a noise or a way that someone was talking. And I want you to see that there is a gauge next to it that is linked to anxiety levels. I want you to see those things. Perhaps you can even feel an element of increased anxiety as you accept currently these things trigger an unwanted emotion. And I want you to imagine that you're dialing down the sensitivity on these things. That it takes more for you to feel any form of anxiety. I want you to, for example, hear the sound maybe of a can opening and dial down the sensitivity. So you could hear that, and it only creates a low level of perhaps mild irritants, certainly not anxiety. Maybe there's a smell, but dial down the sensitivity so that actually that smell doesn't bother you at all. I want you to hear a voice in a particular way that normally would have created a response. But as you dial down the sensitivity, realize that something's changed. And even when you hear the voice in that way, it doesn't seem to have the same reaction anymore. Hear the voice and see the anxiety levels still in that comfortable level. It doesn't bother you at all. I want you to see on the screen several other things that in the past have created a level of anxiety that you felt needed to have a response, a coping strategy. And I want you to imagine that, again, you're dialing down the sensitivity, that it takes more for you to feel even less anxious than you did before. It's not that you're switching anxiety off. Anxiety is there to protect you. It's just that, like a dimmer switch in a room, you're turning down the amount of light, or the volume on a TV, you're turning down the volume. And I want you to get a sense that you're turning down the sensitivity, that all these things that have triggered you in the past, you could imagine seeing them on this screen, almost like you're looking at the situation through your own eyes, and yet it doesn't bother you in the same way that it used to. And that gives you a feeling of freedom. I want you to imagine a force field around you where only 10% of what was triggering you before now gets through. Therefore, it would require 10 times the amount to make you feel anxious. You can still see what's going on. You can still see and hear and feel things, but the ability for previous triggers to make you feel as anxious as you were is dialed all the way down. And let's test it. Imagine going into the screen and imagine that that same sound that triggered you before is there, and yet it doesn't have the same impact. That tension that you would create, or that change to your breathing that happened before, no longer happens. You can hear the sound and still feel relaxed. You can see what you saw and still breathe in the same way you were breathing before. You can appreciate that you might not like something without being triggered by it. Doesn't it feel good to see these things? Not because what you're seeing is good, but because what you're feeling is less than it normally would be. And therefore you're breaking a connection, like Pavlov and his dogs. The bell only worked if the dogs believed that food was coming. Once the dogs figured out that food wasn't on its way, the bell could ring and the dogs would not salivate. You can hear that sound, hear those words, see those behaviors, and it doesn't have the same impact on you anymore. I want you to set the threshold at the appropriate level where you do need it to give you a warning. Imagine being back in the control room and now seeing on screen the level of triggers that you would want to give you a warning sign, to make you cautious, not anxious, not panicked, but just the appropriate level of vigilance required to keep you safe. Maybe you see someone acting erratic, in a dangerous way perhaps, and therefore the gauge is now set at the appropriate level where you can feel a sensation in your gut, a feeling throughout your body just to keep you safe. No need to freak out, no need to panic or be anxious, just enough for you to make choices that keep you safe. And if your unconscious mind is happy that you've reduced the sensitivity of certain things and now have a more suitable level of vigilance proportionate to what will keep you actually safe, just let me know by nodding your head. That's it. Now on this screen, I want you to see you in the future. And first of all, before we step into the future, I want you to see what you were doing in the past. Maybe there was a coping strategy that you used to do that wasn't helpful when dealing with anxiety, and I want you to observe you in the past first of all, see yourself being triggered, and then see what you do to cope. And as you're watching yourself, you realize that this is not an effective strategy to help reduce your anxiety anyway. It's simply deflection, distraction, and displacement. It doesn't actually help. Sometimes people think that if they have a migraine, that if they create pain in a different part of their body, then that suddenly reduces the pain in their head, and yet it doesn't. It just creates new pain, but something else to focus on. Isn't it better to do something that actually works, rather than something that just displaces one pain for another pain, one bad strategy for another bad strategy? So I want you to see yourself on the screen and then rewind it all the way back. See yourself doing the behavior you no longer want to do anymore, and see it happening backwards. Rewind it. And now see yourself triggered at something that gets you in that state of anxiety that is justified. And now see that you use a different coping strategy. And mainly that coping strategy is breath. See yourself being negatively emotionally affected by something, and then changing the location of where you are, perhaps going outside, and then see yourself, and do it with me as you see yourself on the screen, breathing out, a second breath, and a third, all without breathing in, It's an outward breath in 3 stages: your normal breath, a longer outward breath, and whatever's remaining in your lungs before you take that new breath in. And in doing so, see yourself on that screen, changing your emotional state, seeing yourself better able to cope. See yourself doing it maybe 10 or 15 times in a row. And then see that your facial expression at the end of those 10 or 15 sets of 3 outward breaths looks more calm, more composed, more resourceful, more in control. For those things that you can't control, you can always control your breath. And in controlling your breath in this way, you reduce anxiety by controlling what you can control and either accepting or responding to those things that you can't. And the more you do it, the more it works. And the more it works, the more those old ways that you used to consider will just phase out. I want you to think of old things that you have, perhaps in an attic or a shed, a garage, a storage unit, things you used to use all the time, and then when something better came along, those old things became redundant. And therefore, when a new strategy comes along that just works better than the old strategy becomes redundant as an old CD player or VHS recorder, just gathering dust, never to be seen again. Why would you use it if it doesn't work? Why would you use it if something better is available? And as your unconscious mind accepts that to be true, let me know by nodding your head. There we go. Find yourself back in your body in that control room. And as you start to leave the control room, see a few other dials that you would like to boost up. Maybe self-esteem or courage. Maybe creativity or playfulness. Or something else that pops into your mind. Just boost up those levels, knowing that you become more resourceful as you find that your overall levels of optimism and peace of mind are naturally increasing. As you leave the control room, go back down the corridor, and then find yourself back in your body, listening to my voice, firmly in the present, exactly where you are right now. Take a deep breath in through your nose and take 3 outward breaths outside your nose. That's it. That's it. All the way out. Breathe in again. Wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes. Get a sense that you're in your own physical body right now as I count from 1 to 10 to awaken you. Starting to count. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake.
Thank you for listening to The Hypnotist with Adam Cox, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. To automatically receive the latest episodes, please subscribe. If you'd like to support the show, please share this episode with just one friend you think it could help. And if this episode helped you, please leave us a 5-star review.